The last tantrum we had was over nothing. So much nothing that I still cannot recall why it began. He threw himself onto the carpet and started thrashing and screaming, and I just looked at this and thought, I wonder if he knows how ridiculous he looks. I lay down next to him and started thrashing and smashing the floor and screaming and mock crying, and he stopped after about 10 seconds and sat up and turned to me and said, "What doing, Mommy?" I said, "I'm doing what you're doing, sweetheart. Is it funny?" He said, "Yes, funny." I said, "Okay. You want to go play something together rather?" He was pensive, and then he said, "Okay," and jumped into my arms, and we played together. Maybe those 3 experiences seem completely unusual. Maybe, but that's what happened, pretty much exactly. And I thought perhaps there may be some value in sharing them with you. When it comes to hitting children, I have to say, it was my intention to never lift a hand to my children, ever. It was a righteous, well-intended strategy, and I managed to keep to it until my son was just over 3 years young. Children's rights activists will tell me I'm transgressing the laws, written or unwritten, of corporal punishment, and perhaps they're saying that makes me a criminal. I'm not sure, but I will say this. I mentioned earlier that when my friends and I sat around my kitchen table at 19, chatting about how we were disciplined, many of us were smacked when we were young and behaved inappropriately, and we knew that established a boundary around whatever behavior prompted that response, and we respected that, and it kept us safe from going there again. We all knew many adults who admitted to being far better off for that style of loving discipline in their childhoods, and we also knew several adults who were the victims of the abuse of this kind of discipline with disastrous personal consequences. I would caution parents to limit that form of disciplining and try and stop it altogether before the child is 10 years of age at most, preferably way before that, 6 years of age. When children become capable of reason and may have experienced a disciplining smack a few times, it is more than enough to remind them that they don't want to go there again. Better that memory to assist your mentorship as a parent than the child becoming stronger than you, or the strength of your smack, and mocking your discipline or challenging you negatively on it. I fear for the message we are sending children who do not have any significant fear of consequence for behaviors that could compromise them and those around them. And what message are we sending children when we give them freedom to sue their parents or lay charges against them for a smack when the children behaved extremely badly to warrant a strong boundary being established to protect them from their own choices? Now this is a huge debate I'm peeking into, I know, and I have spent a long time deliberating about how to share my deepest feelings with you about this aspect of disciplining on the final frontier, where child meets disaster, meets parent, meets consequence. And if I had to tell you that I considered leaving it out altogether, you'd probably believe me, wouldn't you? But I'm not going to, because I deeply believe that we need to chat about it. Not because you don't hit your children, but because you might be, and I'm not going to call you criminal unless you're leaving marks behind, hitting frequently, or hitting before you've calmed down and spoken with your child. Bruising or anything at all after the hand mark fades, I would call completely unacceptable parenting. And if you are at that level of hitting, we really need to talk, not chat. Get help. I'm not kidding, that's just not okay. And I would say that does deserve more than a talking to from people in authority, and your children may need protection from you. But I will say this. You can change it. You can use this strategy without crossing the line. It is our choice as parents to do so, and that's what I want to chat about here. First things first. We all have to admit we could abuse our children. We are physically capable of it. We're the big guys, they're the little guys, right? So we could. And I believe we are on safer ground when we acknowledge we could and set up boundaries for ourselves to ensure we don't. And then we can recognize it when it's trying to sneak up on us, rather than denying any possibility and being pushed over the edge of reason one day, and it's push, 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 pop. As adults, we are completely responsible for our behavior and the choices we make towards the children we care for, no matter how frustrated, run down, broke or desperate we may be. Crossing the line is crossing the line, and it is inexcusable. That's a line we cannot just hop back over once we've crossed it. It's a line that becomes a 10-foot wall behind us, so let's not even go to it, okay? I believe sometimes children are not reasonable. I believe that of adults too, but we're talking about raising children here. And sometimes when you are reasoning with unreason, it's almost like facing a hysterical person who you might slap across the face to bring to their senses, right? I'm not advocating slapping our children across the face, although sometimes that may feel like it's the perfect response to what you may have just heard come out of their precious mouth. What I'm saying is this. Sometimes, when the behavior could be really dangerous for them if they repeat it, or costly, and our children do not respond to reasoning and losing rewards or treats or whatever, sometimes we may need to snap their perspective against a stronger boundary and help them appreciate it will remain in place to protect them, so that if they repeat that behavior, it will be against that boundary they will bounce. Consequence is the only thing that separates choices being made that serve us or don't. Why do I care, and what's in it for me? At the end of the day, we should all have a healthy self-preserving focus to protect ourselves by making healthier choices that have better results at the end of them. I believe if we use hitting in a healthy way, we help to create those boundaries for our children against which they can lean for protection from their inclinations towards inappropriate, dangerous, or even costly behaviors. I also believe that if we use this strategy, we will barely have to use the strategy. You'll see what I mean. So as I said, my no-hitting strategy lasted until my son was 3 years young, without raising my hand at all, or my voice actually. I wanted him to know the deepest compassion I could access. At 3 and a bit, he started to become immensely more challenging in certain regards. His powerhouse resistance kicked in, and that is there to grow me as a human being and a mother, there is no question. I outright adore him, and I thought a lot of his defiance was absolutely gorgeous, but I began to realize that reasoning was not always sufficient. And so the no-hitting tactic began to reshape into the hitting with heart strategy I adopted, and encourage you to consider worthy of protecting your children with too.